Was I wrong for what I did? For picking up my phone at the dinner table, in front of everyone, and making a call that would unravel years of carefully constructed favoritism and expose my parents for who they really were? You tell me. Because in that moment, as my sister beamed across the table, clutching the keys to a brand new $500,000 property, and I sat there with a measly gift card in my hand, something inside me snapped. A wire that had been frayed for years finally broke, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that I couldn't let it go. Not this time. Let me take you back to the beginning, to a childhood that, from the outside, probably looked idyllic. We lived in a nice house in a decent neighborhood. My parents both had good jobs. My sister, Clara, was 3 years older than me, and from the moment I can remember, she was always the golden child. Clara was naturally graceful, effortlessly charming, and academically brilliant. I, on the other hand, was clumsy, introverted, and struggled in school. Not that I wasn't smart, but my mind just worked differently. I was more creative, more artistic, always doodling in the margins of my notebooks instead of paying attention to algebra. My parents, particularly my mother, never quite understood me. They praised Clara for her straight A's and her perfectly coiffed hair, while my artistic endeavors were often met with a dismissive, "That's nice, dear, but have you finished your homework?" The favoritism wasn't subtle. It was woven into the fabric of our daily lives. Clara got the bigger bedroom, the newer clothes, and the unlimited budget for school trips and extracurriculars. When she wanted to go to an expensive art camp in Europe, my parents didn't bat an eye. When I expressed interest in a local photography workshop, I was told we couldn't afford it, and that I should focus on more practical skills. Birthdays were a glaring example. Clara's gifts were always grand: a new laptop, a designer handbag, and Alex Bence's paid weekend getaway with her friends. Mine were, well, functional. A new set of socks, a gift card to a bookstore, or something practical for my studies. I remember one year, for my sweet 16, I got a vacuum cleaner. A vacuum cleaner. Clara, for her sweet 16, got a used car. The message was clear, even to a teenage me. Clara was worth investing in, I was not. I tried to talk to my parents about it once, when I was in high school. I remember sitting them down, my voice trembling, trying to explain how I felt. My mother scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous, darling. We love you both equally. Clara just needs more support because she's pursuing a more demanding career path." Clara was planning to go into medicine, a field my parents highly approved of. I was considering a degree in graphic design, which they viewed with disdain, often referring to it as playing on the computer. My father, ever the quiet enabler, just nodded along, occasionally interjecting with a vague platitude about working hard for what you want. It felt like hitting a brick wall. After that, I stopped trying to voice my concerns. I learned to internalize the hurt, to expect less, and to develop a thick skin. I told myself it didn't matter. Their love didn't define me. I would prove them wrong with my own success. And in a way, I did. I worked incredibly hard, put myself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs, and eventually landed a great position at a growing tech company. I bought my own apartment, a small but comfortable place in the city, and slowly built a life for myself independent of my parents' approval. Clara, meanwhile, struggled a bit in medical school, eventually dropping out and bouncing between various entry-level jobs, never quite finding her footing. She still lived at home, relying heavily on my parents for financial support. It felt ironic, given their earlier pronouncements about demanding career paths, but I never brought it up. I just kept my distance, maintained a polite but emotionally distant relationship with my family, and focused on my own life. The dinner in question was supposed to be a celebration. My parents had invited us both over, saying they had exciting news to share. I braced myself. Exciting news usually meant something wonderful for Clara and something vaguely underwhelming for me. We sat down at their elaborate dining room table, the kind of table that only gets used for special occasions. My father cleared his throat, a theatrical gesture that always preceded a big announcement. My mother beamed, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Clara, darling," my mother began, her voice dripping with affection, "your father and I have been so proud of how hard you've been working lately. We know how much you've wanted a place of your own, something to give you a fresh start." Clara's eyes widened, a hopeful tremor in her voice. "Really, Mom, what is it?" My father then pulled out a large, ornate envelope. Inside, I could see a set of gleaming silver keys. "We've decided to help you out, sweetheart," he said, handing the envelope to Clara. "Your mother and I have purchased a condominium for you. It's fully paid for, in a lovely neighborhood, and it's all yours." Clara gasped, tears welling up in her eyes. She hugged my parents tightly, thanking them profusely. She cried, "This is the best day of my life." My parents just smiled, basking in her adoration. The condo, I later found out, was valued at approximately $450,000. It was a significant investment, a life-changing gift. I watched the scene unfold, a familiar ache spreading through my chest. I tried to conjure a smile, to offer a congratulatory word, but it felt like a lead weight in my throat. Then my mother turned to me, her smile a little less bright, a little more forced, and darling. She said, reaching into a smaller envelope next to her plate, "We didn't forget about you. We know how much you love to shop, so we got you this." She handed me a crisp, generic-looking gift card. I took it, my fingers brushing against the smooth plastic. It was for a major department store, the kind that sells everything from clothes to kitchen ware. I flipped it over. The amount printed on the back was $100 for me, for Clara $450 property. For me, $100 gift card. The disparity was so stark, so blatant, it was almost comical, almost. A red haze started to cloud my vision. All those years of subtle slights, of feeling like a second-class child, of having my dreams dismissed and my efforts undervalued, crashed over me in that instant. It wasn't just about the money, though that was a huge part of it. It was about the utter disregard, the casual contempt embedded in that gesture. It was about being told, once again, that I wasn't as important, not as worthy, not as loved. I looked at Clara, still beaming, still holding those keys like they were the most precious jewels in the world. I looked at my parents, their faces radiating smug satisfaction, and then I looked down at the $100 gift card in my hand, and I knew, truly knew, that I couldn't sit there silently anymore. I couldn't pretend it was okay. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have let it slide? Would you have accepted the gift card with a polite thank you and walked away, burying the hurt yet again? Or would you have finally stood up for yourself? My hand, seemingly of its own volition, reached for my phone. It was sitting on the table next to my plate, innocent and unassuming. I picked it up, unlocked it, and started dialing. My parents looked at me, perplexed. Clara stopped mid-sentence, her smile faltering. "What are you doing?" my mother asked, a hint of annoyance in her voice. "We're in the middle of dinner." I met her gaze, a cold, hard resolve settling over me. "I'm calling the bank," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the earthquake happening inside me. To verify a few things, my father frowned. "Verify what?" he asked, a nervous edge creeping into his tone. "The terms of my loan," I replied, still looking at my mother. "The one you signed for my apartment 5 years ago." The color drained from my parents' faces. Clara, oblivious, just looked confused. "You see, when I bought my apartment, I was a fresh graduate, and while I had a good job, I didn't have a substantial down payment saved up. My parents, after much cajoling and several arguments, had reluctantly agreed to sign a portion of my mortgage. It wasn't the entire loan, but enough to make a difference in my interest rate and the bank's willingness to approve it. At the time, they made a big show of it, telling me how much they were sacrificing for me, how it was a huge favor they were doing. I had been grateful, genuinely, for their help, but that gratitude had long since been overshadowed by their continued favoritism. And now, seeing the stark contrast in how they treated Clara and me, a wicked idea had blossomed in my mind. I got through to the bank's customer service. I put them on speakerphone. My parents were rigid, their eyes wide with alarm. Clara was still trying to piece together what was happening. "Hi," I said, my voice clear and calm. "I'm calling about the mortgage on my property. My parents' names are signers on the loan. I just wanted to confirm the exact amount they are financially obligated for, and if there are any options for removing them as signers now that my financial situation has significantly improved." There was a brief pause on the other end. Then the representative's voice came through, loud and clear for everyone at the table to hear. "Certainly, ma'am. Let me pull up your account. Ah, yes, I see it here. Your parents are signers for approximately $150,000 of the mortgage. As for removing them, yes, that is absolutely option. You would need to apply for a refinance in your name only, and based on your current income and credit score, you would almost certainly qualify." The silence that followed was deafening. My parents looked like they'd seen a ghost. Their faces were ashen. The $150,000 was a significant sum, and while they could afford it, it wasn't something they wanted to be on the hook for indefinitely, especially since their financial help for Clara's condo had just tied up a large chunk of their liquid assets. The implications were clear. If I refinanced, they would no longer be responsible for that $150,000. It was their leverage over me gone. My mother found her voice first. What are you doing?" she stammered, her eyes darting between me and the phone. "This is not appropriate, isn't it?" I asked, a bitter smile touching my lips. "You just gave Clara $500,000, fully paid for, to give her a fresh start. Meanwhile, the help you gave me was a co-signed loan that you constantly reminded me was a burden to you. And now, 5 years later, you give me a $100 gift card as an afterthought." My father finally spoke, his voice strained. "That's not fair. We love you both. This is different. Clara needed more help." "Needed more help," I scoffed, unable to keep the venom out of my voice. "She's 3 years older than me, dropped out of med school, and has been living rent-free at home for years. I put myself through college, worked 2 jobs, and bought my own apartment. I just asked for you to sign a fraction of my loan, and you acted like I was asking for your kidney. Clara gets a free ride, and I get a vacuum cleaner for my sweet 16 and $100 gift card for major life event." Clara, finally understanding the gravity of the situation, looked devastated. "Is this true, Mom, Dad? Is this how you've always felt?" she asked, her voice cracking. My mother tried to backtrack, to explain, to justify, but her words were hollow. My father just sat there, defeated. I hung up the phone, the satisfying click echoing in the suddenly silent dining room. "I'll be starting the refinancing process first thing Monday morning," I announced, pushing my chair back. "Once that's done, you'll be off the hook for my mortgage." And then, I think it's time I took my $100 and bought something truly useful, maybe a new pair of socks. I grabbed my purse, the gift card still clutched in my hand, and walked out. I didn't look back. The aftermath was exactly what I expected, and yet, somehow, also entirely unexpected. My parents called me relentlessly for days, alternating between anger, guilt, and attempts at reconciliation. They tried to paint me as the villain, as ungrateful, as spiteful, but I held firm. I went through with the refinancing, a process that took a few weeks but was ultimately successful. The relief of knowing I was truly independent, that I owed them nothing, was immense. Clara, surprisingly, reached out to me. She was hurt by our parents' favoritism, and she finally saw what I had been trying to tell them for years. We started talking more, slowly rebuilding a connection that had been strained for so long. She even offered to help me move some boxes when I eventually considered upgrading to a bigger place. My parents, after realizing I wasn't going to back down, eventually backed off. The relationship is still strained, probably beyond repair, but there's a certain peace in that. I no longer seek their approval, no longer expect anything from them, and that, in itself, is a gift. So, was I wrong? Was I cruel to expose them like that, to call the bank mid-dinner and dismantle their carefully crafted illusion of fairness? Part of me thinks it was a drastic measure, perhaps even a petty one, but another, much larger part of me believes it was long overdue. It was a cry for validation, a demand for recognition, and a declaration of my own worth. I guess I finally learned that sometimes you have to create your own justice. Like this video if you were on my side. Subscribe for more stories like this, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'll see you all in the next story.